there are a lot of people in this county that have given their lifetime to local history. Charlie and Paul are two of them. But it's not an easy choice sometimes to pick the people we pick. But in this case, it was like a no-brainer for us. We were really pleased. Carol and I, as last year's recipients, sometimes wonder why we were chosen first. But the fact is that there are a number of people that are deserving of this honor. But this year is Charlie and Paul. We're really grateful and thankful for being able to present these awards to them. I'm a presenter, mostly in terms of the presentations that are made by the presenters. They have a long-term association with the people that they are presenting. Maybe they went back to their careers or their social engagements or things like that. Someone may even go back to childhood, and I think, Paul, we're going to hear a little bit about that later. You should cringe. But in my case, it's kind of different. I've only known Paul for 5 years. About 5 years ago, he was one of about 20 or 25 of us that got together and decided to brainstorm what we could do in terms of a roundtable for the first of Ballston. It was the Ballston area roundtable. But Paul and others, and that first meeting, had decided, and I think John was part of that as well, John Cromie, is that let's expand our vision to be the Saratoga County History Roundtable, and that's what we did. And Paul was instrumental in that. But Paul didn't stop there, he just couldn't be quiet. So what he did was, as we were kind of getting towards the end of the meeting, he says, we should reinstitute the grist mill. And of course, me being much younger, said, what was the grist mill? And Paul told us about the fact that the grist mill was the quarterly journal of the Saratoga County Historical Society from the late 70s and so on. It would be good to resurrect that. And I said, Paul, since I don't remember back that far and you do, I think you're the one that should resurrect it. And the great thing about Paul is that he never says no. And not only that, but he jumped into that development of the grist mill and has been the editor for the last 5 years. So this just shows you the initiative that Paul has through everything he's done in his life. And again, I didn't know Paul for the first 65 years of my life, but I do know him at this point. I really appreciate everything he's done. He goes way back, though. I mean, he was born in Cohoes, attended Christian Brothers Academy. Tell me when I got some of these facts wrong. CBA, and went to Siena College. Who went to Siena College with him? The gentleman.
I was a student once he finished Siena.
Oh. So Siena, and then after I guess a short stint in a Catholic school, took a job in Shenandoah as a history teacher in 1967. In the meantime, he managed to get his advanced degree at Albany State. So, but Paul never seemed to be satisfied with that. And after a few years of teaching, he actually decided to go a totally different route in terms of what he was going to do with the rest of his career. And I've been told that is one of the people that is very instrumental in that was Principal Lynda, Principal Lynda, I guess was your mentor to a certain extent, and kind of said, Paul, why don't you go administrator? Why don't you go administrator? And it didn't take Paul long to follow that route, but he wasn't all that successful in the beginning. He seemed to come in second a lot, when I heard. Is that true? So he got a little discouraged, and then he got some notice that there was an opening in Ballston Spa. But he wasn't that much interested. In fact, my understanding, if I heard it right, was that little notice hit the wastebasket or something, or got put aside, And he was, I don't know if you want to go to Ballston Spa or you just got a little discouraged. Anyway, picked it out of the wastebasket, responded, got the job, and was in the Ballston Spa School District for almost 30 years. Almost 30 years. As principal of the high school and principal of the, I should be doing this, sorry. And principal of the elementary school as well, right? Which I understand, I'm going to have to do this. Here's Charlie. And there's a picture, I'm not sure it really looks like, just the character of the photo itself tells me a little bit how we were going to clean it up. Let's clean it for you. So Paul again spent almost 30 years in Ballston Spa School District, and I understand that you actually enjoyed the elementary school position maybe more than the high school, or is that not for public knowledge?
They each had their presidents.
But I think he's well respected in his 30-year career from that, and then about 2009 you retired. Okay, but before that, long before that, I guess in 1980, there was another dimension to Paul's life, and that was his commitment to society and the social aspect of doing good for others. And he's been I guess now you'd have to say, a 40-year member of the Ballston Rotary, okay, which he joined in 1980, and also served at least a couple of terms as president of that organization. So that is another capstone in what Paul is. Paul's a multi-dimensional man. I mean, he was, yes, he was a historian. Yes, he was a well-respected principal, but he was also a man who was looking out for the social activities and to help the people that need help. That the Rotary is one of those organizations that does that. So that's much to Paul's credit doing that. And then when he retired, he had nothing else to do, so he said, I'm going to take that job as the Malta town historian. And he's and in that role for the last 12 or 13 years, he has fostered a lot of good information, I'd say, that he's shared with the community. He has certain things that he really focuses on, but he has a lot of broad activities he's involved in. But if you know anything about Paul, then you know something about the Luther Forest. You know something about his focus on the Malta rocket test station, which he's done a lot of research and done a lot of put together a lot of information on that as well. He's well known for that and other activities. And in fact, as late as last night, he was giving a talk on Elmer Ellsworth, which is he's the first Union officer killed in the Civil War. Yeah, I was not sure of that until last night. It was counted, and there's a lot of good stories. That Paul does not just tell history; he tells stories, and I think that's so important in reviewing history. You don't want to make it dry, and Paul does not make it dry. He really does tell the stories, and even to the point of stolen eagle or stolen.
The brass eagle.
Yeah, 300-pound brass eagle. He was telling us that story last night. So it was stolen off the top of the monument for Ellsworth. So I think that got the most reception of anyone. Yes, he knew Abraham Lincoln. Yes, he did all these other things, but the stealing of his monument was, I think, the biggest thing. So Paul has just been a wonderful person to work with, and one of the things I'm really pleased of is that he is now, as he is stepping down from being the editor of the grist mill, again, not being able to say no, he's agreed to help us in the next edition or next version of the grist mill, which we're going to be developing over the next year or so to enhance that publication in different ways, and so Paul will be right with us. So I just want to congratulate you, Paul. It's been a great experience working with you, and I know it's not going to end. So congratulations.
Thank you.
That was pretty much the dry part of the presentation. We're going to get, you want me to go to that?
No, I can wait just a little bit.
Okay. But you know what's coming.
I got a feeling.
Yeah. I'd like to introduce Lynda Bryan, who's the Half Moon historian and the town clerk, and also knows a little bit about the past of Paul going way back. So welcome.
Thank you, Jim. I think this is a part that Paul's a little bit nervous about. You know, when they asked me to say a few words, which is difficult for me, I first had to kind of figure out how long have I known Paul. And I didn't have to think too far because I've known him forever. Paul is my cousin, and he's also a cousin to many other people who have come here tonight to honor him. Our family is a large family, and when we were kids, Paul was one of the just a little bit older crowd. He was one of the cool teenagers, as we were the nerdy kids. And they always did more fun things than we did. And then all of a sudden at our family reunions, this girl started coming around who did not look like us. We are all French-Irish with fair skin, freckles, curly hair, and blue eyes. And all of a sudden this beautiful girl comes around. She's Italian, and she's got gorgeous brown eyes, beautiful hair. And we're like, where does she fit in here? And who is she? And she was Paul's girlfriend, and she said yes to him, and she married him. So we're so glad that you're here and part of our family. Now I got to fast forward a little bit to high school. And in high school, I think in my 10th grade year, we heard there was a new teacher coming to Shenandoah. I'm like, all right, let's see here. And he was a history teacher, and that was Paul. And he wasn't just happy not just to be our teacher, he was also excited, I'll be the class advisor too. And now we're like, oh, now we're in trouble here. He was my class advisor, and I've got twin sisters who are a year behind me, so when I graduated, Paul got them. And, but we couldn't pull all the shenanigans that identical twins usually do because Paul had it in, he knew my mom. That was worse than principal. So we have our class of 71, so now I'm kind of aging myself. We have a little Facebook page, and Paul comes to all of our reunions. So I just put out a little notice just the other day to say, hey, Paul's being honored if you can make it. And I see, Dave, you're here, thank you. And if you can, maybe you could just say a few words and just give him some well wishes. So I just thought I would bring a few here. And just say a few of the well wishes from some of our classmates. Give the best to Paul. No one deserves this award as much as you do. Your tireless efforts benefit the entire surrounding communities. Congratulations, Melissa Jocelyn. Congratulations, Paul, on a well-deserved award. Lessons learned from you over 50 years ago are still applied. And yes, you still remain my favorite teacher of all time, Dave Sanderson. Mr. Perreault, congratulations on receiving the History Award. I cannot think of a more deserving recipient. Your many years of public service is commendable. You were a wonderful class advisor. Then thank you for your support, patience, and guidance when I was a sophomore class president. You're the best. Carol Daly. And last, Paul, bravo and congratulations on this beautiful honor. Thank you for bringing the shimmering light of education into the lives of so many. You rock. More regards, Happy Heart. I did print them out for you, all of them, but that's quite a few of them, so I'll give you this that you can read. I won't bore everybody with all of those things, okay? But it's been a long time since high school, more than I care to remember, but now that we're a little bit older, coincidentally, Paul and I find ourselves both as historians to our respective towns. Paul has come to several of my presentations in Half Moon, I to his. Sometimes Paul sets up a table at my presentations and he speaks, and usually about Colonel Elmer Ellsworth. He does a great job. When I inherited the position as historian, I started looking through records because I'm starting from scratch here, and I found an old newspaper article. And this newspaper article was of a history fair that the Clifton Park Half-Moon Library used to put on every year. And down on the bottom of this newspaper article, I find this picture. That one there. So the next time that Paul and I get together, I said, hey, Paul, who's this guy? And he goes, I don't know, but I think my wife would like to meet him. Paul has always had a very quick wit. And can we go to the next slide? Is that it's right here? Let me just try it, see if it works. It does. Paul gets his sense of humor from his father. His father is my Uncle Bill.
He's the one in the middle.
Uncle Bill to the right with a drink in his hand. The fellow to the other side is my grandfather, Joe, and he also has a drink in his hand. That was one of the common denominators that and playing cards, pinochle. So I bring this, I say, hey, Paul, look what I just found. What do you think? And he goes, well, the way I see it, 3 of a kind beats a full house anytime. So now here we are in our golden years. And once again, we are collaborating right here in this beautiful building at Brookside Museum. Who would have ever thought? And this building is just so beautiful. It was built in the late 1700s. And 3 years ago, it was discussion about closing the building. And with a group of people that work here, volunteer, a lot of supporters, this has all turned around. The programs are fantastic. They're not all educational. There's a lot of fun programs that are out there. So if anybody is interested at all to become members, I find it just fascinating. And I've only been here since November. But Paul, you're not only my cousin, but a dear friend. And most importantly, you're my mentor. So I thank you for all the memories and congratulations on this prestigious award, the Saratoga County History Award. I thank you very much and love you.
Thank you.
And
I'm sure everybody here knows that Saratoga County is one of the fastest growing counties in the state, if not the fastest growing. I think it is actually the fastest growing. Well, what that means is that we have a significant percentage of our population that were not born here, did not go to school here, did not have grandparents who could tell them which schoolhouse they walked up hill both ways up to the schoolhouse. They couldn't pass on that memories of a sense of place in Saratoga County. So it's up to the historical community to fulfill that need. And a significant element of that community are the municipal historians. There are 25 of them in our county, from the largest cities in Saratoga and the largest towns in Clifton Park to the smaller towns, mostly up north. Each of them do a wonderful job. Some of them with really good resources and support, like I have. I have an office, I have a budget, and I have a town board that supports me. To some of the historians in the smaller areas that don't have all those facilities, some of them work out of their own homes. I'm not sure they get too much of a budget, and I'm not sure how much the political group recognizes their importance. So I accept this award on behalf of all those municipal historians who are passing on those important memories, that important sense that we stand on the shoulders of those who came before us. So I accept the award in their name. I also, it's very, very nice to be recognized by your peers, there's no question about it. But as a teacher, a former teacher anyway, to have students that you haven't seen in 50 years say to you or about you that something you said to them, some thought that you passed on to them is still with them and has been a part of their lives. It's the biggest tribute a teacher can have. So I really appreciate what you've done, Lynda, in collecting that information. Thank you very much.
Paul, for that wonderful acceptance speech, and also for Jim and Lynda for two delightful tributes. Thank you very much. Now I would like to invite to the lectern Carol Godette. Carol was a recipient last year, and she will introduce our next honoree.
Hi, good evening. Thanks for coming. Well, our next honoree is Charlie Kuenzel, and last year I was so thrilled to win this award, but the whole time I kept thinking Charlie should have won this over me. And the reason was that Charlie and I were teachers together, not in the same capacity. Charlie was a nurse science teacher, I was an elementary teacher, but our paths crossed a lot. We both grew up in Saratoga. And Charlie, if I had to sum him up in one word, it's inspiration. Charlie was my inspiration to get into history. As teachers, we had to take a 6-hour course to just stay current on something. And Charlie and his sidekick, Dave Patterson, decided as teachers that they wanted all the other teachers, because there were a lot of teachers in Saratoga who weren't from the area, as Paul mentioned, to know where we lived and to pass that passion that they had on to their students. So they developed a course, and I took the course every year because it was the most fascinating 6 hours. And they would take us around to the springs, and they would talk about the sulfur content and the different mineral contents of each and talk about that importance. And it inspired me to really dig deeper. And so Charlie and I both retired in 2010, and the district had a little reception, and there were only 3 teachers who retired that year. And I remember sitting with, because other people, clerical workers, custodians retired, we sat at the reception together and said, what's going to be next for us? And Charlie already knew that he wanted to delve deeper into his passion of history. And I wasn't sure at that time what I was going to do. And Charlie really ran circles around me for years in that regard. But he inspired me the whole time because I watched from afar all the volunteer things he did. So creative. Most recently, I just listened to a podcast he did on Christy. She's here. She's our editor. We both write for Simply Saratoga, historical articles. But he did a series of podcasts on health, history, and horses with Christine Alexander, who is an endocrinologist, and she does the health part, he does the history. And listening, I learned so many interesting things about Christmas. That one was fascinating, yeah. But besides that, as I look around the room, all the people, Nicole Babby's here from the Preservation Foundation, and Charlie and I, every year they do historic home tour in May. And Charlie either does the breakfast or the lunch, and we get together and we do different programs. And I like it when Charlie does the lunch, because then my responsibilities are out of the way. I can do my program in the morning and then go and enjoy his. And they're always fascinating. So that's one of the things. But then Marianne, I know you're here somewhere, Fitzgerald. Yeah, so, I mean, how many times has Charlie done tours for you? I mean, the Senior Center, Prestwick Chase, I can't keep up with him. He is constantly volunteering. And he does so many different creative, interesting things that he's inspired me. So when I first started doing historical articles, I wrote about neighborhood stores, but he inspired me to go deeper. And so now I look at a spot and I said, well, we think it's this, but now what is it? And it was really, he doesn't know this, but it was really Charlie who inspired me to really dig a lot deeper. He's dug very deep in the Casino History Museum, and I couldn't even begin to go through every creative thing he's done. So I asked Jamie Parillo to come and talk a little bit more about that. So Jamie, if you could come on up.
Thank you, Carol. All right, this is where the roast of Charlie begins.
Why am I surprised?
Honestly, I'm very honored that I was asked to do this tonight and to be able to say a few words about my close friend, Charlie Kuenzel. So,
I'll duplicate a few things that Carol said. But I first met Charlie, and I think it was 2002 or 3, and that's when Charlie was working with Dave Patterson. And I knew Dave very well. He was on my board. I think he was even president at the time. And all I knew was Charlie was another teacher at high school, and he was Dave's friend who knew the science stuff, as Dave would do this. So I went on one of the first tours I ever did with him. Dave started off by talking about history. And then Charlie pulled out blocks, just big old blocks, and he's talking about how the fault line works, why the springs are here. And as he's doing it in a way that, I'm a historian, I'm not a geologist, and he did it in a way that I was like, wow, this really made sense. Like, it's good that we have a science guy that wants to do history. But then all of a sudden I learned that he really knows the history. And as I got to know Charlie more, I realized that it's not just why the mineral springs are here geologically, it's why are we here? It's because of the mineral springs. And he beat that in me, and I know that now. And when Charlie has done his tours and does so much for the city, he really emphasizes that's why we're here, is for our mineral waters. He started volunteering for us, doing tours and programs just for the museum. And then we said, hey, do you want to be on our board? So Charlie volunteered to be on our board of trustees for his first term. And it was about the time when we at the museum were kind of expanding, we're trying to get different programs. Charlie was the one that really suggested that we reach out and expand our programming to do ghost tours and things. He was instrumental in combining history and this aspect of science that visitors are absolutely enamored with. So much so that today it's a major revenue stream for the museum, and it still ties in a lot of history. Without his idea, I poo-pooed it. I said, there's no way that we're going to do this. We're not getting in this crazy business. But Charlie talked the board into it, and I listened. Well, thank God I did. So Charlie ended his board term, but he kept volunteering. I'd say, Charlie, we've got a program going on. I think maybe you could do a tour on a Saturday morning. Never said no. Hey, we've got a company coming into town. I need 2 extra people in the casino. Would you mind doing some tours upstairs? Never said no. In 2015, the city formed a centennial committee to celebrate the centennial of Saratoga Springs. Steve Sullivan went to Charlie, and he asked him, he said, would you chair that? That we want to re-drill High Rock Spring. Charlie asked me if I would be on it with him. I'm like, sure. So we say that Charlie and Jamie were on the committee that re-drilled it. Charlie re-drilled it. I wrote a couple of historical panels that are on display in High Rock Park. Charlie coordinated the city. Charlie coordinated hawk drilling. He worked with the press. Without all of that, and I know how much of a headache he had doing this. It was a really difficult task. All volunteered, and he did all of it for the sake of preserving the history of the Springs. So I got him back on the board after that. I'm like, well, as long as you're still into this. So not long after that, we got him on the executive committee. And then we made him president. And that took a little convincing because, generally the president of an organization does pour a lot of energy and time into volunteering. I think I'm in my 31st or 32nd year in this profession, in the historical field. Charlie is the most active volunteer board member / president that I've ever known. We meet every single day. Every day, 10 a.m., we sit down in my office, maybe in the lunchroom, and we have a meeting. We talk about, okay, who's doing what tours? What do you have tomorrow? What do you have tomorrow? And then we go into personal discussions. So to watch the Yankees play, which I know he watched the Yankees play. And then in football season, we'll talk about the Giants. But so not only becoming personal friends, but it's so much so that it's almost like we're two colleagues working together in the same business. I look at the tours he's doing, and I say, oh my God, so you're going to Prestwick, you're going here, you got 6 tours this week. I mean, Charlie, I only have 1. So, and I'm the one getting paid, so. But and there's only one reason somebody volunteers like that. It's because they love it. They love the history. Charlie's a native Saratogan. He grew up in our city, and he knows what that heritage is. And I think that we are extremely lucky to have somebody like Charlie Kuenzel involved in any historical projects in Saratoga County. He's only got about half a year left as board president. but he doesn't know yet that we've actually already got a station for you, so you can't really. But when you think about this, you know, I always think this is something you told me that you did as a kid, and I kind of think about it. So you got this kid growing up in Saratoga Springs. He plays in the Valley of the 10 Springs, and what was down there? You know, you had the mud baths and the spring houses, full of rent by the mid-20th century, full of remains of spring water bottles and water carboys, beautiful pieces for history. They look fantastic in this museum or in our museum. He used to throw rocks at them and break them. And think now the history and the love of history that he has for the mineral springs, really instilled by your family, your grandfather. So I can't think of anyone more deserving for this, other than the other 3 people that have received this award. So Charlie, congratulations, I'm so honored that I got to do this thing.
Boy, Paul, I don't know if I'm feeling like you did, or you're, whatever. That's a lot. Wow, I didn't think I did all that, so that's pretty good. Got a lot of people fooled. A lot of times when I reflect back on the journey I've had through my life, one of the things that has definitely been most important to me, I was raised by my grandparents. I was raised on the east side of Saratoga by my grandparents, and my grandmother knew history. So I had to know history. And even though I have an undergraduate degree in geology, and then I went on to biology, and then I did astrophysics for 10 years and a few other things, the history was always there. Especially with the springs. And I remember, you know, Carol and Jamie were talking about how in my teaching career we had times when we would, Dave Patterson and I, tough raising another child my age. But I'll tell you, we were always doing courses in enrichment for faculty because a lot of the faculty had no connection with the district, and we didn't want that. We wanted a real strong feel for what it was about. The other thing is John McFadden was superintendent for a long time. John and I were real good friends, and he came to me, I don't know, probably 25 years ago and said, maybe it was 30 years ago, and said, I think most of our new teachers can't afford to live in Saratoga, so they're living someplace else. Can you teach them in the month of August everything they should know so when they talk to kids in the classroom, they'll understand what the kids are talking about? And I remember saying, yeah, I grew up on the east side, I grew up at the rec, I did all the things that Saratogians do, so I thought it was in pretty good shape. But it was amazing because it was instilled into me not only by my grandparents, and my grandmother especially, but also in the school district, the idea of the importance of telling the story. And Paul hit on this with 25 town historians and things. I think what we have, and I used to do this with my class, I'd say to them, you're making a quilt. If you have an interesting life, you have a quilt. You don't have a blanket. Both of them will keep you warm, but a quilt is made of small pieces that tell a different story on each one. And that's what Saratoga County has got with all of our historians, all of our outreach, all the people, and along with, I don't know how I get to write an article every once in a while for Simply Saratoga. So Chris, I don't know where you are. Oh, there she is. I'm sorry, Chris. Thank you for letting me do that and getting out and telling stories. And like I said, most of it's true. So, you know, it's not bad. So thank you very much, one and all. I'm very, very honored, truly honored to be in the presence of people. Now, see, Paul alluded to this. I'm going to go one step further because of my years in astrophysics and stuff. Newtonian physics. Newton in 1654 said the concept of, people said, how did you come up with the universal laws of gravitation? And he said, I stood on the shoulders of giants. And that's exactly right, Paul. That's what we do. We learn from other people, we pass it on, and we try to make this patchwork quilt of good history, make everybody belong. So thank you, one and all. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Charlie, for your inspirational response and also for Carol and Jamie for the tributes that they brought to us. I won't keep you much longer. I would just like to remind you that we have a major exhibit, not counting this room, the rest of the first floor, which will open for a members preview on Friday, May 19th. This exhibit is the first comprehensive exhibit on the history of the county in the 60-some-odd years of this museum, and it's going to be beautiful. It was funded largely by the County Board of Supervisors with additional support from Stewart State Family, Muncher Enterprises, and the Adirondack Trust Company. I hope that all of you will come see it. It draws upon the artifacts collected in this building over the last 60 years, many of which have not been seen. Many photographs and text as well. And just to plug, please, we are rebuilding, as you know, and the rebuilding has gone extremely well, 3.5 years into it now. We need you as members, every one of you, at some level. When Ann Clothier called and asked me to come and see what I could do to help with the museum 3.5 years ago, there were roughly 95 members. There are now about 450. So we have really grown. I would say when I was director here in the early 80s, there might have been 500, 550. So we're getting close to the old level, and we really need to go above it in order to give this institution a solid financial basement. There are a lot of sources of income, but that's a very important one. There are membership brochures just to the right of the front door as you're about to go out there. They're dark green, and you can spot them there. Everything is topsy-turvy, including the brochure racks, because we've been painting and getting ready to install. It's there. Thank you again for coming to Brookside for this wonderful occasion. Honor these two people who have done so much for the history of our county.